The wind screamed against the cliffside, carrying the scent of salt and danger as Elaine Alexander felt her cane tremble beneath her fingers. She couldn't see the jagged edge beneath her feet, but she could feel it, an emptiness so wide it hummed through her bones. Her shawl whipped behind her like a frightened bird. Behind her stood Rose.
Calm, poised.
A picture of innocence wrapped in black fabric, hands gently hovering at Elaine's back as if guiding her, yet her smile held something cold, something sharp no one else would ever see. "Careful, Elaine," Rose murmured, voice warm enough to fool the sun. "Just one more step. I'm right here." Elaine paused. Her brows knit together. There was a heaviness in Rose's tone she couldn't quite place, something that made her chest tighten. But before she could turn her face toward the sound, before she could ask Jack why he was growling low in his throat, Rose shoved her. Hard. The cane slipped. Elaine's gasp sliced the air. Her screams spiraled downward, swallowed by the thunder of the waves crashing against the rocks far below. And then, silence. Ridgepoint Cliff stood still again, as if nothing had happened. No hikers. No cameras. No witnesses. Only the ocean roaring its approval beneath the gray sky. Rose exhaled, long and slow. It was over. The secret, the threat, the blind woman who knew too much, gone. Or so she believed. She forgot the dog. Jack stood a few paces behind her, paws rooted to the ground, ears pinned back, eyes wide and burning with instinctive understanding. He had seen everything. The shove, the betrayal, the moment Elaine vanished from the world. Rose turned. Jack charged. A blur of fur and fury slammed toward her with a growl that rolled across the cliff like thunder. Rose stumbled backward, heart punching against her ribs as she barely dodged his snapping jaws. Jack didn't miss by accident. He stopped because the edge was too close, too dangerous, and because something else demanded his attention. He spun toward the cliff, barking wildly, urgently, each sound echoing across the empty valley. It was a call, a warning, a refusal to let the world move on without knowing what had happened here. If you believe every voice deserves protection, especially those who can't see the danger coming, you're already part of this moment. Stay with us. Down below, somewhere between life and death, Elaine clung to a dead tree jutting from the cliff side, her shawl tangled in the branches, her fingers shaking as she held on with everything left in her frail body. Rose froze. Jack kept barking. Elaine had fallen, but she wasn't gone. And Jack wasn't done. The cliff, the scream, Jack's frantic barks, they dissolved into the crashing waves below as the world shifted backward, carrying us to the quiet places where this tragedy truly began. Before the betrayal, before the shove, before Ridgepoint Cliff became the stage for a crime disguised as mercy. It began the day Rose Alexander first stepped into the Alexander household with a smile so wide it nearly hid the calculation behind her eyes. Elaine remembered that day with a warmth that still lived in the corners of her fragile heart. She stood in the living room, fingers tracing the smooth grain of the armchair beside her as Michael's voice echoed from the doorway. "Mom," he said, glowing with excitement, "I want you to meet someone." The footsteps that followed were light, delicate even, paired with a faint scent of lavender and something sharper, something metallic beneath the sweetness. Elaine couldn't see her future daughter-in-law, but she felt the presence immediately, a stillness, a tension wrapped beneath the polite breath Rose took before speaking. "It's wonderful to finally meet you, Mrs. Alexander," Rose said softly. Elaine smiled, the kind of smile that held genuine openness. She reached forward, extending her hand. "Please call me Elaine. And welcome." Rose took her hand lightly. Too lightly, as if afraid to touch someone she didn't truly value. But Elaine didn't sense that, not yet. Jack, however, did. He padded into the room, nails clicking on the hardwood floor, and positioned himself beside Elaine with the natural confidence of a guardian. His ears twitched at Rose's voice. His tail didn't wag. "Oh," Rose said with a friendly chuckle, "this must be Jack." Michael beamed. "He's been Mom's guide dog for 3 years. Smartest dog I've ever known." Elaine reached down, brushing her fingers against Jack's fur. "He's my eyes. My little miracle." For a heartbeat, Rose's smile strained, but she recovered quickly. "Of course," she murmured. "He's perfect for you." The words were sweet, yet something about the tone made Jack shift closer, placing himself between the two women as if drawing an invisible line. Elaine didn't notice.
Rose did.
And a seed, small, bitter, and dangerous, was planted that day. Life in the Alexander household held a quiet rhythm. Elaine moved by memory and touch, counting every step, measuring every doorway, listening to the way the house breathed in the mornings. Her blindness had become less of a limitation and more of an adaptation, one Jack helped her navigate with seamless devotion. Every morning, the house woke to the gentle tapping of Elaine's cane.
Tap, tap, tap.
A sound that blended into the warmth of fresh coffee and the hum of the kettle. Rose heard it differently. On her third morning living in the house, she sat at the dining table, makeup perfect, jaw tight, watching Elaine make her way into the kitchen. Michael rushed forward to help, but Elaine waved him off with a soft laugh. "I know my way, sweetheart." Jack guided her to the cabinets. Elaine opened them with ease, fingertips brushing the mugs until she found the one she wanted. Rose's expression flickered, annoyance masked behind admiration. Michael returned to the table and kissed Rose's temple. "Isn't she incredible? She can do almost everything on her own." Rose smiled.
"Yes."
"Incredible." But inside, she bristled. Every compliment Michael gave his mother was a reminder that Rose was still second in this home. Not even blindness had made Elaine dependent in the way Rose had hoped. Worse, Elaine had a presence, a softness, a trustworthiness that Rose could never imitate perfectly, no matter how charming she pretended to be. And Jack noticed everything. Whenever Rose entered a room, his ears snapped forward. Whenever she passed too close to Elaine, his body tensed. Whenever she laughed at something Michael said, Jack watched her with wary eyes, as if he sensed the hidden sharp edges beneath her smile. Elaine thought he was simply being protective. Rose saw it as judgment. She hated that dog long before she hated the woman he protected. One sunny afternoon, months before the cliffside betrayal, Elaine insisted the family go out to their favorite diner. A bright, bustling place with wide windows and the smell of buttered toast filling the air. The very scene reflected in the image, a cheerful day wrapped around a moment that would later carry a darker meaning. Elaine stood at the entrance, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, cane in hand, Jack by her side. The sounds of clinking plates and soft chatter floated out as the door opened. Michael guided her inside, but Jack stayed close, his presence a silent promise. Rose lingered behind them, watching. She watched Elaine's fingers brush the tabletop as she found her seat. She watched Michael pull out the chair for his mother first. She watched the way people smiled at the gentle older woman with the loyal dog sitting proudly at her feet. And she hated it. She hated how easily Elaine attracted warmth. She hated how easily she commanded attention without seeing any of it. She hated how Jack rested his chin on Elaine's knee, as though guarding royalty. Rose slid into the booth opposite them, fingers curling around her napkin. Michael laughed about something, an old family memory, and Elaine laughed too, a soft, musical sound unaffected by the darkness behind her eyes. Rose felt overshadowed, outshined, invisible, and though Elaine's blind gaze never rested on her, Rose felt judged, as if Elaine could see straight through her despite the empty space where her sight should have been. Jack lifted his head and stared directly at Rose. A quiet, warning stare. Rose forced a smile, but her thoughts were turning, slow and dark. Why does she get everything? Why does he adore her so much? Why does that dog look at me like he knows something I don't? Jack's stare didn't break. Rose reached for her water, her hand shaking just enough for her to notice. Moments like these make you think. The soft voice of the narrator murmurs across the memory. If you've ever protected someone fragile, hit like and keep going. You're part of a community that understands. Michael excused himself to take a phone call outside, leaving Rose alone across from Elaine and the dog. Elaine folded her jaw. The resentment that had quietly sharpened inside Rose did not fade after that afternoon at the diner. It only deepened. And in the weeks that followed, the Alexander home became heavier, quieter, as though the walls themselves sensed something shifting in the shadows. Elaine sensed it too, not with sight but with the other senses that had grown in the absence of it. One night, everything changed. Elaine sat alone in the living room, listening to the gentle hum of the house settling into evening. Jack lay at her feet, head resting on her slippers, tail swishing occasionally against the carpet. Michael had gone to a late meeting, and Rose had claimed she needed to finish some work calls in the study. Elaine didn't mind the silence. She'd lived long enough to appreciate the comfort of stillness. But Jack's ears suddenly perked up, lifting high and alert, breaking the quiet like a ripple spreading through calm water. "What is it, boy?" Elaine whispered. Jack didn't move toward the door. Instead, he stared in the direction of the hallway, toward the study. Elaine tilted her head, listening. A voice carried through the air.
Low.
Urgent. Rose's voice. Elaine wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the blindness that had taken her sight had sharpened her hearing into something near supernatural. She could hear tension in voices, hear lies hidden under breaths, hear secrets whispered when people thought she wasn't paying attention. Tonight, that gift became a curse. "I told you the money was already moved," Rose hissed, her voice just loud enough for the words to reach Elaine's ears. "I can't push anything else without him noticing." A pause. A soft clicking sound. Rose pacing.
No, listen.
His mother can't see a thing, but she hears too damn much. I have to be careful. Elaine's fingers tightened around the armrest. Jack picked up on her sudden stillness and nudged her ankle gently. Rose continued, her voice sharper now. "If Michael finds out about the missing funds, I lose everything. Everything I've built, everything I've planned. You don't get it. He trusts me. And once the transfer is complete, we're done. No more debts. No more threats. But I just need..." Her voice dropped lower. Elaine leaned forward. "I just need that old woman out of the way." Elaine's stomach twisted. Jack pressed his head against her knee, sensing the spike of fear in her breathing. Rose kept talking, harsher now. "Yes, I can handle it. I said I can handle it. Just give me a few more days." Then a soft beep. She'd ended the call. Footsteps approached. Elaine straightened, trying to calm her breathing. Jack stayed pressed against her leg, muscles tense, ready. Rose stepped into the doorway. "Elaine," she asked sweetly. "Still awake?" Elaine forced a smile toward the sound. "Just resting, dear." Rose hesitated. "You feeling all right?" "Perfectly fine." Rose hummed softly and walked to the kitchen. But Elaine could feel the shift, the cold air left behind when Rose exited the room. She touched Jack's head. "You heard it too, didn't you?" Jack didn't bark, didn't move, but his silence was answer enough. Elaine's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear for herself, but fear for her son. Michael was many things, kind, trusting, hardworking, but he didn't have the instincts of someone who expected betrayal. He believed in the goodness of people, especially the woman he'd married. Elaine knew she couldn't let this continue. She had to act. Quietly.
Carefully.
Before Rose realized what she knew. The next morning, Elaine waited for the sound of Rose's car pulling out of the driveway before moving.
Tap, tap, tap.
Her cane echoed against the hallway floor as she made her way to her bedroom. Jack stayed pressed close to her side. She reached for the small wooden box on her dresser and opened it by touch. Inside was a Braille notepad, something she rarely used but kept for moments that needed privacy. She sat on the edge of her bed and wrote a message. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but urgency. "Michael, please speak to me as soon as possible. It concerns Rose and the family accounts. Something is wrong."
Mom.
Jack lay at her feet, watching her every movement. When she finished the note, she slid it carefully into an envelope and placed it inside Michael's suitcase, beneath the documents he always checked before bed. That was step 1. Step 2 took more courage than she expected. She dialed the number for the bank, pressing the buttons carefully, reciting the digits from memory. A woman answered. Good morning. Sutton Bank. How may I help you? Good morning, dear, Elaine said gently. I'd like to confirm some recent activity on my son's account. I'm his mother. Of course. One moment. But before Elaine could speak further, footsteps approached from the front door.
Fast.
Light but sharp. Elaine froze. Jack growled softly. Rose had returned early. Elaine hung up the phone immediately and set it aside. Her pulse raced. Rose's shadow reached the doorway before her voice did. Elaine? Her tone was bright, but there was something acidic underneath. You're up early. Elaine forced a calm smile. Just getting organized. You know how mornings can be. Rose stepped into the room slowly, as though assessing the air itself. Her eyes traced the phone. The notepad. Elaine's trembling hands. Everything okay? Rose asked too casually. Yes, Elaine said quickly. Perfectly fine. Jack stood between them, tail stiff, ears pointed forward. Rose's smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said softly, let me know if you need anything, dear. And she left. Elaine waited until the sound of her heels faded before releasing a shaky breath. Jack climbed onto the bed and pressed his head into her lap. I know, she whispered. I know, boy. I'm scared too. But Michael has to know. He must. Later that week, Elaine took the final step. One she had never imagined she would need. She contacted the family lawyer. Mr. Harding had been a trusted friend for decades. His voice trembled slightly when he heard Elaine's concerns. Elaine, he said gently, this is serious. If Rose is moving funds without Michael's knowledge. I know. Do you have proof? Not yet. Just suspicions. But strong ones. He hesitated. I'll review what I can. Quietly. Send me anything else you discover. Elaine nodded, though he couldn't see it. Thank you. When she hung up the phone, she felt Jack nudge her hand again. He'd been unusually protective the last few days, never leaving her side, always alert. It's all right, Elaine whispered, though her voice trembled. We're doing the right thing. But Elaine underestimated Rose. She underestimated how desperate a person becomes when everything they're hiding is one breath away from unraveling. 2 nights later, Michael was asleep. The house was quiet, and Elaine felt confident enough to slip out of her room and fold her Braille note into Michael's suitcase. But she didn't know Rose had followed her. She didn't know Rose had already noticed her sneaking around. She didn't know those sharp footsteps behind her had been tracking her for days. Elaine placed the letter beneath Michael's documents and closed the suitcase gently. Then she turned around. Rose stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face pale with fury. Interesting thing to put in someone's bag, isn't it? She whispered. Elaine's breath caught. Rose, Rose snatched the suitcase off the bed, flipped it open, and pulled out the envelope. She tore it open with trembling hands and read it. Her jaw tightened. Her hands shook so hard the paper rustled like leaves in a storm. You think you're going to ruin me? Rose hissed. Elaine took a step back. Jack growled a low, dangerous sound. I'm trying to protect my son. Rose's laugh was sharp. Protect him? From me? You blind old woman. Her voice cracked with rage. You have no idea what you've just done. Elaine felt Jack push against her leg, shielding her. But Rose wasn't done. Not even close. The panic in her eyes had transformed into something far more dangerous, something that would, in time, lead them both to the edge of Ridgepoint Cliff. And Elaine, gripping Jack's fur for steadiness, finally understood. Rose wasn't just dangerous. She was desperate. And desperate people don't break quietly. Rose didn't sleep the night she found Elaine's Braille letter. She didn't pace. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded neatly in front of her and stared into the dark, every breath measured and cold. The fear she'd felt, the panic of being exposed, had burned away. What remained was sharper, harder, something that no longer trembled. She knew Elaine suspected her. She knew the letter meant Michael would find out. And she knew, without question, that she had run out of time. By dawn, Rose wasn't the frightened woman who had torn open a letter with shaking hands. She was someone else. Someone eerily calm. Someone ready to remove the final obstacle standing between her and the life she believed she deserved. Elaine awoke late, exhausted from the confrontation the night before. Michael had left early for work, unaware of what had unfolded while he slept. Jack stayed at her bedside, refusing to leave her for even a moment. The dog sensed danger now, not just tension. True danger. Jack followed Elaine through the house as she prepared breakfast, ears twitching at every sound, his tail still and alert. Rose entered the kitchen quietly, her footsteps soft, precise. Jack immediately stepped between her and Elaine. Rose smiled. "Morning, Elaine." Elaine stiffened slightly. She didn't respond at first. She needed to steady her breathing. Jack growled, a low rumble deep in his chest. Elaine reached down and brushed his fur. "Jack, it's all right," she murmured. But Jack knew it wasn't. Rose kept her smile fixed. "I wanted to apologize for last night. I was overwhelmed. I shouldn't have snapped." Elaine turned her head toward the voice. Her expression was calm, but her fingers, resting on Jack's neck, trembled. "You seemed upset," she said softly. Rose's eyes flickered.
Yes.
"And I'm sorry." The apology sounded genuine.
Warm.
Almost remorseful. But inside, Rose was calculating, watching Elaine's every reaction. She studied the soft lines of Elaine's face, the way her head turned toward sounds, the way her cane rested near her hand. She studied the frailty, the vulnerability, the trust. It wasn't just blindness Rose saw now. It was opportunity. She'd spent months watching Elaine's routines, where she walked, how far she could go alone, how easily she followed a guiding voice. Rose had noticed every habit, every weakness. But now, she paid even closer attention. After breakfast, she watched Elaine make her way through the garden path, Jack pacing beside her.
Tap. Tap. Tap.
Rose stood at the upstairs window, eyes narrowed as Elaine counted her steps to the gate, then back to the porch. Her movements were slow, predictable, vulnerable. Rose whispered under her breath, "She'll follow anywhere I ask her to go." The idea was no longer a vague, angry impulse. It was a plan, a clear one. There was a place she'd visited before, once with Michael. Ridgepoint Cliff. Remote.
Silent.
A place where the wind swallowed sound and the rocks devoured anything that fell. No cameras. No witnesses. No chance of survival.
Yes.
It was perfect. That afternoon, Rose took the car and drove out alone under the excuse of a grocery run. She didn't park in the public lot. Instead, she followed a narrow dirt path that led to the cliff's back entrance, a route few people knew about. She stepped out and walked to the edge. The world opened before her. Jagged cliffs, foaming ocean, wind howling like a voice begging to be heard. Rose inhaled deeply. All she had to do was bring Elaine here, help her to the edge. A gentle slip, a simple scream swallowed by the sea. "It'll look like an accident," she whispered. "She slips all the time. She can't see her own footing." A swell of satisfaction warmed her chest. This time, no Braille letter would ruin her plans. No midnight confrontation. No chances. Just a quiet walk and a fatal misstep. Rose returned home with a grocery bag she didn't remember picking up. But Jack remembered the moment she stepped through the door. His growl was immediate, deep, threatening. Rose froze in the doorway, meeting his eyes. Jack didn't bark. He didn't lunge. But the warning in his gaze was unmistakable. Elaine reached for him. "Jack? What's wrong, sweetheart?" Rose forced a nervous laugh. "He must be tired." Elaine stroked Jack's head. "He's been uneasy today. Maybe he senses something." "Oh," Rose asked sweetly, but inside she seethed. That dog was a problem. Always watching. Always getting between them. And now, even he seemed to know what she planned. Elaine moved toward her armchair, guiding herself with her cane. Jack remained glued to her side. Rose watched, eyes thoughtful. She didn't have much time before Michael returned. And she needed him calm, clueless, so she softened her voice. Elaine, may I sit with you? Elaine stiffened, surprised. Rose continued, gentler. I've been thinking. We've had a rocky start and I want to make things right. Jack stepped forward, placing himself between them. Elaine frowned. Jack, behave. She's trying. Rose knelt beside Elaine's chair, ignoring the dog entirely. I'd like to take you on a walk tomorrow, she said softly. Just the two of us. A chance to talk. No tension. No misunderstandings. Elaine hesitated. After last night, I don't think. I was stressed, Rose cut in quickly. Truly. I shouldn't have spoken the way I did. I want us to get along. Rose reached gently for Elaine's hand. Elaine's fingers twitched. Jack pressed his head against her leg again. Rose added softly, Please? I want peace between us. Elaine had always been forgiving. It was both her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. After a long silence, she nodded. All right, Rose. A short walk. Rose's lips parted in relief. Thank you. It means a lot. But Jack barked sharply, once, loud and sudden, as if shouting no. Elaine flinched. Jack. He quieted, but his body remained stiff. Rose smiled gently. On the inside, triumph bloomed. That night, Rose prepared. She rehearsed the route, the timing, the story she'd tell afterward. She imagined the fall, the cane slipping, the scream, the splash far below. She practiced her reaction. Fear first, then grief, then the call to the police. She thought of everything, except Jack. She didn't consider the way he watched her from the hallway, silently, as she whispered to herself. She didn't consider the growl in his throat that grew deeper each hour. She didn't consider that some instincts, especially a loyal dog's, were stronger than fear. Elaine slept fitfully. Jack curled on the floor beside her, his ears twitching at every creak of the house. Rose slept peacefully, almost eagerly. Tomorrow her problem would be gone, and she believed, so foolishly, that she would walk away untouched. In her mind, the plan was flawless. She had no idea that Jack had already made a plan of his own. Morning came too quietly. The sun broke over the Alexander home with a gentleness that felt strange, like the world itself was holding its breath. The house was still, the light soft, but there was a heaviness in the air that only Jack seemed to understand. He didn't leave Elaine's side all morning. Not when she dressed. Not when she prepared her tea with trembling hands. Not when Rose walked into the kitchen with a smile that was too bright, too stretched across her face. Ready for our walk? Rose asked cheerfully, her voice warm enough to melt sugar. Elaine managed a small smile. Yes, dear. Just give me a moment to get my cane. Jack stood between them, shoulders stiff, tail low, eyes following Rose's every movement. Rose knelt and reached toward him as if to pet him. Jack stepped back, lips pulling tight, not baring teeth, but close. Rose froze, her smile flickering. Still not warming up to me? She said lightly. He'll behave, Elaine said gently. He's just protective. Of course. Rose straightened. Shall we? Elaine nodded, tapping her cane twice against the floor before taking Rose's offered arm. Jack positioned himself on Elaine's right side, their practiced formation, guide, guardian, shadow. Together, they stepped outside. The day was beautiful, almost unnervingly so. Birdsong filtered through the trees. A gentle breeze brushed against Elaine's cheeks. The path that curved through the Alexander property had never felt more serene.
Tap, tap, tap.
Elaine's cane traced the softened dirt pathway as she moved carefully. Jack's paws patted beside her in steady rhythm. But he wasn't calm. Not today. His ears twitched at every flutter of leaves, every snapped twig, every exaggerated breath Rose took. If loyalty had a sound, it was the low rumble in Jack's chest. Rose kept her voice bright and sweet as she walked slightly ahead, occasionally glancing over her shoulder. You know, Rose said, I'm really glad we're doing this. I've been wanting to bond with you. Feel closer. Elaine tilted her head, recognizing the tone. Too smooth, too rehearsed. That's kind of you. And you know, Rose added with an airy laugh, I feel we've misunderstood each other. I want you to know I care about this family. Truly. Jack huffed quietly. Elaine reached down and brushed her hand along his fur. Something wrong, boy, she murmured. Jack didn't bark. He didn't stop walking. But his ears were pulled back, head lowered slightly, tracking everything. Rose kept talking, words tumbling out too fast, cheerfulness dripping into something brittle. I mean, families are complicated, right? Lots of tension, lots of misunderstandings. Elaine paused mid-step. Something in her chest tightened, not fear exactly, but intuition. A soft alarm ringing in the dark. Rose, she said gently. Are you all right? Rose froze. Then she laughed too loudly. Of course. Just making conversation. You know how quiet walks can be. Elaine's brow knit slightly. She couldn't see the strain in Rose's eyes, but she could hear the tension woven into every syllable. Jack nudged Elaine's leg. Elaine tapped her cane lightly and whispered, What is it, sweetheart? Jack lifted his head toward the trees, sniffing the air. Something ahead, something beyond the peaceful forest, felt wrong to him. Rose forced her bright tone again. Let's keep going. The air is so fresh today. But her eyes flicked ahead, toward the trail that narrowed into the forest. They were moving closer. As they walked deeper into the trees, the peaceful forest path grew uneasy. Shadows stretched across the trail. Birdsong thinned into silence. Elaine slowed, feeling the shift in the air. Rose, she said softly, this path feels unfamiliar. Rose glanced back with a tight smile. It's just a new route. I thought you'd enjoy a change. Elaine's hand tightened on her cane. A change?
Yes.
I've been exploring around here. Rose kept walking. It's beautiful, I promise. Jack growled low, deep, unmistakable. Elaine reached down again. Jack, what's wrong? Rose turned sharply. Elaine, please. He's making you nervous for no reason. Elaine tilted her head, listening not to Rose's words, but to the strain behind them. Her instincts prickled. Her blindness made her cautious, but her intuition made her wise. Rose, she said gently, are we still on our usual path? Of course. The answer came too quickly. Jack's growl deepened. Rose whipped around, glaring at him. Can you control him? He's ruining the moment. Elaine let out a slow breath. Jack, heel. Jack obeyed, reluctantly, but he never broke his gaze from Rose. The trees thinned. The breeze sharpened into a cold slice. They were getting close. Elaine could feel it. Wind rushed through the clearing ahead, fiercer now, whipping through the tall grass. Elaine paused as the air shifted dramatically, almost violently. Rose stepped forward with exaggerated enthusiasm. We're almost there. You're going to love the view. Elaine's heartbeat quickened. Rose, where are we? Don't worry, Rose said softly. I'm right here. The breeze hit Elaine full in the face then, cold, salty, wild. The kind of wind that only comes from open, unguarded space. Jack barked sharply. Once, loud and commanding. Elaine's breath hitched. Rose, this isn't right. Where are we? Her voice trembled now. Rose smiled, though Elaine couldn't see it. But if Elaine had been able to, she would have seen how that smile had hardened into something grim. Just a few steps more, Rose whispered. Jack lunged forward, placing himself directly in front of Elaine, blocking her from moving. Jack. Elaine gasped, reaching out. Rose's jaw tightened. He's overreacting. The wind howled louder. The earth beneath Elaine's feet felt uneven, less stable. Something inside her knew. Rose, she whispered, voice cracking. Please tell me where we are. Rose stepped close, too close, and placed her hands on Elaine's shoulders. Don't worry, she murmured. I'll guide you. Jack snarled, teeth bared this time. Rose's mask slipped. She snapped. Move, you stupid dog. Elaine gasped at the venom, so sudden, so intense, so unlike the gentle woman Rose pretended to be. The truth was in her voice. Sharp, full, uncontrolled. Elaine backed up a step instinctively. Rose, what are you? Rose inhaled sharply. This was it. The moment she had planned. The moment she had rehearsed. The cliff's wind roared around them, as if trying to warn Elaine. But she couldn't see the drop. She could only feel the danger pressing against her skin. Jack barked, fur raised, body braced protectively. And in that final step, as the forest gave way to open air and the cliff loomed invisibly before her, Elaine understood. This walk wasn't about peace. It wasn't about bonding. It wasn't about forgiveness.
It was a walk toward death.
And Rose, smiling with a cruel certainty, was still guiding her straight to the edge. The wind roared like a living thing. Elaine stood trembling at the cliff's unseen edge, Jack snarling at her side, the air electric with danger. Rose's hands rested on Elaine's shoulders, steady, gentle, deceptively calm. Rose, Elaine whispered, her voice breaking. Please, what are you doing? Rose leaned in close, her breath hot against Elaine's ear. Ending this, she whispered. And then she shoved. It wasn't a light push. It wasn't hesitation. It was violent. Absolute. Final. Elaine's cane flew from her grip. Her feet slipped on the loose gravel. Her scream tore from her throat, raw, terrified, echoing through the valley.
Jack.
Her body vanished over the edge. Her cry was swallowed by the wind. For a moment, everything stilled. Rose stood frozen, chest heaving, staring at the empty space where Elaine had been. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. A twisted, trembling release of all her panic and paranoia. She had done it. Finally, she had done it. Relief washed over her, warm and dizzying. Her shoulders sagged.
Her pulse steadied.
For the first time in months, she felt in control. No more threats. No more secrets at risk. No more blind woman listening from doorways. It's over, she breathed. But she had forgotten one thing.
Jack.
The dog didn't scream, didn't whine, didn't freeze. He launched. A flash of muscle and fury, pure instinct firing through every nerve. Rose barely had time to turn before Jack slammed into her with the force of a charging animal twice his size. She hit the ground hard. Air punched from her lungs, hands scraping against jagged rocks. Get OFF, she shrieked, scrambling. But Jack wasn't listening. This wasn't the gentle guide dog who nudged Elaine through hallways and guarded her steps. This was the protector, the witness, the avenger. His paws pinned Rose's shoulders as he snarled inches from her face, teeth bared, eyes blazing with a rage she had never imagined a dog could hold. Rose screamed, kicking wildly. Stop. Get away. Jack didn't budge. He snapped at the air near her neck, a warning so sharp she could feel the heat of his breath. His growl vibrated through her bones. It wasn't a mindless attack. It was deliberate, controlled,
punishing.
Rose clawed at the dirt, her body shaking. She tried to shove him off, but he was heavier than she realized, fueled by terror and loyalty and a primal drive she had awakened. Get away from me, she sobbed, twisting beneath him. Jack barked in her face, a deep, exploding sound that rattled the air around them. She flinched so hard her head smacked the ground. Pain shot through her skull. For a moment she was sure he would tear her apart. Then, a faint sound broke through the chaos. A voice. A scream from below. Jack.
Elaine. Alive.
Jack heard it too. He froze, ears pricking forward, the snarl dying on his tongue. His entire body shifted, from wrath to desperate alertness in a single heartbeat. Elaine was calling. Elaine was alive. Elaine needed him. Jack stepped off Rose, but he didn't retreat gently. His paw pressed into her ribs as he pushed away, forcing her to gasp for air. Rose lay there, stunned, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. Jack didn't look back at her. Not once. He sprinted toward the cliff, claws scraping rock, body hurtling forward with frantic urgency. Rose scrambled to sit up, her hair wild, blood on her cheek. No, 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 she breathed, terror flooding her chest. She can't be alive. She can't. But Jack was already at the edge, barking down the cliff with a desperation that cut straight through the silence. Elaine's faint cries rose from below, weak, broken, but unmistakably alive. Rose staggered to her feet, backing away from the cliff. This wasn't over. This wasn't perfect. This wasn't the clean disappearance she planned. And Jack had seen everything. Panic burned through her. She turned and ran, bolting into the trees, stumbling over roots, branches whipping her face as she tried to flee the valley, flee the truth, flee the dog who had almost torn her apart. But even as she disappeared into the forest, her chest heaving with terror and mud splattering her clothes, something haunted her. Jack hadn't chased her. He had chosen Elaine instead. And that one choice, his loyalty, his howl, his refusal to leave Elaine behind, was about to unravel everything she had done. Everything she thought she had won. Because Jack wasn't just a pet. He was the witness she forgot. The guardian she underestimated. And now he was calling for help. The wind whipped around the cliff's edge like an angry specter, tearing at the jagged rocks and rattling loose stones down into the abyss. Elaine's arms trembled, muscles screaming with fatigue, as she clung desperately to the edge. One hand gripped the rough stone, the other caught on the torn hem of her coat. It had snagged on a dead branch jutting out from the cliffside, a cruel lifeline that kept her from plummeting into the darkness below. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, a staccato of panic and pain. The side of her face pressed against the cold, unforgiving rock, her cheeks scraped and bleeding. Bruises blossomed along her arms and legs, each movement sending shocks of agony through her body. "Help, please," she rasped, her voice nearly swallowed by the roar of the wind. "Somebody, anybody." The cliffside echoed back only her own terror, mocking her with silence. She tried to shift her weight, testing the branch that held her precarious position, but it groaned and bent under her, threatening to snap. Her heart hammered so violently that it felt like it might tear through her chest. Then, somewhere from behind, a sound, familiar, primal, cut through the howling wind. "Jack!" she screamed, hope and fear clashing violently. Jack's howl tore across the mountain like a jagged blade. It was desperate, echoing through the canyon, carrying both fury and anguish. Elaine's heart leapt. He hadn't abandoned her.
Not now.
Not ever. Far below, along the winding trail, the sharp, urgent tones of the howl reached the ears of hikers who had paused to take in the view. At first, they assumed it was a mountain dog, perhaps warning of danger, but the intensity, the anguish in the cry, made their hearts race. "What is that?" one of them asked, scanning the ridges. "Sounds like someone's in trouble," another replied, grabbing her walking stick. Without hesitation, the group sprang into action, racing along the path, each step guided by instinct and the echoing wails that seemed to pierce straight into their souls. Above, Jack did not wait. He raced along the ledge, barking and circling in frantic loops. His coat shimmered with rain and sweat, eyes locked on Elaine's dangling form. Every bark was a call, a direction, a plea for the humans below to follow him. The hikers, guided by the relentless cries, followed the dog as he zigzagged along the cliffside. He paused at intervals, looking back to ensure they were still coming, then darted forward again, barking and pivoting. Jack's movements were precise, urgent, a map made flesh, guiding them exactly to where Elaine hung by the thinnest thread. Elaine's vision blurred with tears and exhaustion, but she saw them. Figures moving carefully along the ledge, guided by the dog she trusted more than any human in the world. A surge of relief warmed her chest, fighting back the panic that had gripped her for what felt like an eternity. "Hold on, Elaine," one of the hikers shouted, spotting her. "We've got you." Her fingers tightened on the branch, every ounce of strength she had left. I'm here, she called back, voice trembling. Jack barked again, circling the branch just above her, as if to steady her, as if to say, "I've got you. Don't let go." His eyes, wide and blazing, reflected the storm and the danger, but also an unwavering determination. The hikers inched forward carefully, ropes in hand, their hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline. One of them, a young man with steady hands and nerves of steel, anchored a line to a rock and began descending toward Elaine, moving cautiously to avoid dislodging the fragile branch that was keeping her alive. Elaine gritted her teeth, bracing herself, and whispered through clenched lips, "Please don't let me fall." A tense eternity stretched, measured only by the wind and the thudding of hearts, until the young man's gloved hands reached hers. "Grab on," he urged, and she lunged, fingers trembling, until she could wrap them around the rope. Jack leaped forward, landing lightly on the ledge above, tail wagging furiously, barking encouragement. He pressed close to Elaine, nose nudging her cheek, a living reminder that she had survived, that she was not alone. With careful, practiced movements, the hikers hauled her up, inch by inch, as Jack circled protectively. Finally, bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, Elaine collapsed onto solid ground, the weight of her body releasing the branch she had clung to for what seemed like hours. She gasped, chest heaving, tears streaking her dirted face. "Jack, you saved me," Jack barked triumphantly, nuzzling her, licking her cheek, eyes gleaming with pride and relief. Around them, the hikers exhaled in unison, faces pale but smiles breaking through. Elaine wrapped her arms around the dog, holding him tightly, feeling the warmth and life beneath his fur. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering, I thought I was gone." Jack let out a low, contented whine, tail wagging as if to say, "Not while I'm here. Not ever." Above, the wind still howled, the cliff still loomed, but for Elaine, the terror had ended. She was alive. Against all odds, she had survived. And beside her, the one who had never abandoned her, never faltered, was there, her guardian, her friend, her miracle. The wail of sirens cut through the wind, echoing across the cliffside like a promise of salvation. From below, the rescue teams advanced with precision, ropes and harnesses swinging from their shoulders. Helicopter blades sliced through the sky, sending waves of wind that rattled the trees and stirred loose stones on the precarious ledges. Elaine clung to Jack, tears streaming down her dirt-smeared face as the rescuers secured the ropes to anchor points above. "We've got you," a rescuer called, voice firm but kind. "Hold tight, we're bringing you up." The first rope dropped with a thud, swinging in the gusting wind. Elaine reached out, trembling, and gripped it with both hands. The climbers secured her harness, attaching it to the line with practiced efficiency. Inch by inch, she was lifted, the world tilting beneath her. Her sobs mingled with the wind, with Jack's soft whimpers and nuzzles urging her to keep going. Jack pressed against her, head resting on her shoulder, for-slicked with rain and sweat. It's okay," his quiet whine seemed to say. Her hands clutched his fur, grounding herself in his presence. For a fleeting moment, terror gave way to relief, and she allowed herself to breathe. When her boots finally touched solid ground, she collapsed, leaning against Jack, who circled her protectively, tail wagging in anxious relief. She cried openly, allowing the exhaustion, the fear, the sheer terror of the last hours to wash over her. The hikers who had first spotted her, still shaking but smiling with relief, recounted the dog's heroics, their voices mixing with the murmur of rescuers and the wind. But amidst the chaos, something caught Elaine's attention. From the edge of the clearing, a figure watched silently, almost too calm for the storm that had just passed.
Rose.
Her presence was deliberate, calculated. The police officers, alerted by the hiker's description, began moving toward her, suspicious glances darting between them. Elaine's heart lurched. She recognized her immediately. The same cold eyes, the same thin-lipped smile, the same hair falling carelessly over her face. It was the voice she would never forget, the voice that had whispered cruelty and malice just hours before. "Rose?" Elaine's voice was weak, trembling, but sharp enough to carry over the wind. The woman turned, a hint of a smirk forming as if she could talk her way out of anything. I was just hiking," she said, voice smooth, rehearsed. I heard the commotion and came to see what happened. But the lie fell apart instantly. The hikers, still present, stepped forward, pointing toward the cliff, recounting the details of the push, the shouts, the scramble, and the sudden fall. Their accounts painted a clear picture. Rose had been at the cliff, her movements suspicious, her presence the last thing Elaine remembered before the branch caught her coat. Officers approached cautiously, hands hovering near their holsters, eyes never leaving Rose. Evidence was already mounting, a torn sleeve matching Elaine's coat snag, footprints in the loose soil near the cliff's edge, and the hikers' corroborating testimony. Rose's composure cracked slightly, a flicker of panic crossing her carefully constructed mask. Elaine, still leaning on Jack, felt a surge of vindication. She had survived, and now the truth was surfacing. Her voice, though hoarse, grew stronger. "You tried to kill me," she said, every word sharp as a blade. "And everyone saw you." Rose faltered, opening her mouth as if to spin another story, but the truth was closing in. The police's eyes hardened, their skepticism now palpable, and the evidence was undeniable. There was no room for lies. Jack whimpered softly, sensing the tension, pressing closer against Elaine as if to shield her from the remnants of fear still clinging to her. Elaine ran a hand through his fur, grounding herself. "It's over," she whispered, though the words felt strange coming after the chaos of near death. "It's finally over." Rose's smirk vanished, replaced by a cold, calculated stare that barely masked the panic beneath. The officers stepped forward, asking for identification, for an explanation, but every lie Rose tried to speak fell flat, contradicted by witnesses and the undeniable physical evidence. Elaine's gaze never wavered, never softened. She had faced death, dangled over a void that could have swallowed her whole, and survived. Now, she was the one with the clarity, the one whose story the world could see. Jack pressed his head against her again, whimpering quietly, sensing her resolve. The rescue teams began packing up, ropes coiled neatly, harnesses secured, but Elaine did not move. She stayed where she was, letting the adrenaline ebb slowly, letting the horror of the last hours settle into memory. Around her, the hikers and rescuers murmured their relief, but her eyes remained fixed on Rose. For the first time since the fall, she felt safe, but she also felt the stirring of justice. Rose's presence had been exposed, her lies laid bare, and the web of deceit that had nearly cost Elaine her life was unraveling. The officers finally moved in, gently urging Elaine to step back from the cliff's edge. She allowed herself to be led, Jack padding faithfully beside her. The woman who had tried to destroy her, who had nearly ended her life, was now cornered, powerless, and facing the consequences she had so desperately tried to avoid. Elaine inhaled deeply, the sharp mountain air filling her lungs. Her hands, still shaking, rested on Jack's back. "Thank you," she whispered, not to the crowd, not to the police, but to the dog who had never let her fall. "Thank you for keeping me alive." Jack nudged her hand with his nose, tail wagging, eyes gleaming as if he understood every word. In that moment, the cliff, the fall, the terror, they were behind them. What lay ahead was justice, truth, and survival, and Elaine would meet it with every ounce of courage she had left. The handcuffs clicked with a finality that echoed across the cliff clearing. Rose's protests, screams, and desperate lies fell on ears trained to hear only facts, and nowhere was truth clearer than in the evidence stacked against her. Jack growled, low and menacing, as officers guided her toward the waiting patrol car. His hackles rose, eyes fixed on the woman who had nearly ended Elaine's life. She screamed again, insisting Elaine was lying, but Jack's unwavering stare silenced even her fury. Elaine watched from a distance, bruised, battered, and exhausted, yet something inside her stirred, a sense of closure, of justice finally being served. Her legs trembled as she stepped closer, Jack at her heels, tail stiff with protective pride. Rose's shouts dwindled as the police loaded her into the car, the sound of the engine and its retreating lights sealing her fate. You're safe now, Elaine whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the residual wind that swept across the cliff. Jack whined softly, pressing against her legs as if to confirm that safety was not just an idea, but a living, breathing reality. The hospital was a blur of white walls, antiseptic smells, and the soft beeping of monitors. Elaine's arm was bandaged, bruises darkened into mottled purples and blues, yet the relief in her eyes outshone the pain. Jack never left her side, curled in a protective half-circle around her bed, nose resting on the blanket, ears twitching at every sound. He was her shadow, her guardian, her silent companion through the long hours of recovery. Doctors moved with practiced efficiency, patching up the injuries that would heal, but nothing could touch the invisible scars left by fear and betrayal. Elaine's hands twitched as she reached for Jack, who responded instantly, pressing his head into hers. I thought I'd lost you," she whispered, voice trembling. Jack's tail thumped softly against the bed, a reminder that she had not been alone. Michael entered quietly, his face pale, eyes red from sleepless nights and worry. When he saw Elaine, frail but alive, tears welled up uncontrollably. He fell to his knees beside the bed, shaking, voice breaking. "Elaine, I didn't know. I never knew." Elaine reached out a hand to touch his, though it trembled. "Michael, you have to know the truth," she said softly, the weight of betrayal still present in her tone. He leaned closer, listening, as she recounted everything: Rose's deceit, the push, the danger, the hours clinging to the cliff with only Jack's unwavering loyalty to keep her alive. Michael's body shook as guilt and grief consumed him. "I failed you," he whispered hoarsely. "I should have seen. I should have protected you.
I'm so sorry, Elaine.
I can never forgive myself for doubting you." Elaine's lips curved faintly into a sad, understanding smile. "It's not your fault, Michael. What matters is that it's over now." Jack nudged her hand gently, tail wagging, as if to punctuate her words with living proof that loyalty and love had prevailed. Word spread quickly. Jack became a local hero, the dog who had not only saved Elaine but had guided rescuers to her exact location, navigating the cliffs with intelligence and courage that seemed almost human. The community celebrated him in small, heartfelt ways: donations to the local shelter in his name, a mural at the trailhead, and countless children bringing treats and hugs whenever he appeared. Elaine, once again surrounded by those who cared, knew that Jack had proven what she had always felt: true family wasn't determined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and unwavering devotion. Elaine leaned over to scratch behind his ears, her fingers tracing the fur that had saved her life. "You're more than a dog, Jack," she said softly. "You're my family. You always have been." Jack whined happily, nudging her hand with his nose, eyes sparkling with pride. As Rose faced the full weight of her crimes in the courtroom, Elaine stayed beside Jack, drawing comfort from his presence. The spectators, hikers, rescuers, neighbors, watched silently, aware that the dog had played a role no human could replicate. When the gavel finally fell, signaling Rose's conviction, Elaine exhaled deeply. Relief, justice, and gratitude swirled together in a potent mix that left her dizzy but unbroken. Michael remained by her side, hands clasped over hers, eyes wet but filled with respect and apology. "I promise," he said quietly, "I will never doubt you again, and I will always honor your courage and his." He nodded toward Jack, who sat alert and dignified, the embodiment of their triumph. Elaine looked out the window of her hospital room, watching the sun rise over the cliffs that had almost claimed her life. She thought of the wind, the rope, the ledge, and of Jack's steadfast presence. A smile curved her lips, small but genuine. The ordeal was over, the threat gone, and she had learned a truth more powerful than fear: the ties that bind a family are measured not in blood, but in loyalty, courage, and love. Jack rested his head in her lap, and Elaine stroked him slowly, feeling every beat of his heart. Around them, life hummed with quiet celebration, whispers of admiration for a dog who had become legend, and a young woman who had survived against impossible odds. True family, Elaine murmured, isn't blood. It's love. And loyalty. And you, Jack. Always you. Jack whined softly in response, tail wagging with contentment, as the first rays of sun bathed them in gold. A new day, a new life, and a story of survival and devotion that would never be forgotten.